2 degrees Celsius. This is the goal of the Paris Climate Agreement, to keep the average global temperature from warming more than 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. It's been about 200 years since the Industrial Revolution. In that time, ever-increasing amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere have helped heat the Earth more than halfway to that point. Let's take a closer look at the last 100 years. From 1920 to 1980, the global temperatures climbed about 0.4 of a degree Celsius. After 1980, that pace more than doubled. In just 40 years, the temperatures have climbed another 0.7 of a degree. In 3 of the last 5 years, temperatures have crossed the 1.2 degree mark. Last year, we reached 1.27 degrees Celsius above late 19th century temperatures. We're dangerously accelerating toward that 2 degrees. And this is only a global average. Many locations around the planet have seen temperatures soar to much higher levels. Large parts of Europe, Greenland, Alaska, and Russia, including Siberia, have already surpassed 2 degrees. And up north, above the Arctic Circle, the warming is over 4 degrees. That extra heat concentrated in the Arctic, well, that's causing a massive melt of polar ice, and it's only getting worse. On average, 14,000 tons of water melt from the Arctic every second. That's more than 4 times the amount of water that goes over Niagara Falls each second. If we stay on our course over the last 10 years, the Earth could hit the 2 degree mark as soon as 2040, and possibly up to 3 degrees by 2060. Only a significant reduction in carbon dioxide emissions quickly will make the Paris goal a reality. Climate scientists say surpassing that milestone will result in more frequent deadly heat waves, drought, and wildfires, making large areas of our planet uninhabitable. And sea levels are, quote, very likely to rise a foot by the end of the century and could rise by even as much as 8 feet. That will likely make hurricanes more powerful, specifically unleashing flooding connected with dangerous storm surges, impacting hundreds of millions of people who live in coastal areas. Our road to 2 degrees is shortening. The time to act? Now.
Shortages could impact 1 billion people, while millions more will be at risk from coastal flooding. It can seem overwhelming, but there's reason for hope. If we embrace solar and wind power to their full potential, we can cut the world's yearly carbon emissions by 1/3. Already, Germany generates 27% of its electricity from renewables, with a goal of 80% by 2050. Denmark has shown it can produce more wind energy than it can use, and England is building the world's biggest offshore wind farm. Communities large and small are taking steps. A new public building in Mexico City has an exterior that breaks down air pollutants, erasing the effects of 1,000 cars each day. Paris installed street tiles that harvest energy from foot traffic. Other cities are paving streets with smog-eating concrete and sidewalks with recycled materials. Individuals can make a difference too, through the choices we make every day. If every American driver drove 10 miles less each week, it could eliminate more than 100 billion pounds of carbon from the air each year. New innovations are making important strides possible, and more are on the way, but we can't wait. Reimagining our world's energy future will take a shared sense of urgency from countries, companies, cities, and all of us. Working together, real change is possible. Learn more at natgeo.com/climate.
Makakalikasang 2025 po, we are now streaming live on our official Green Convergence FB page. As always, we'll start with a reminder of our Zoom etiquette, followed by the opening prayer and the Philippine National Anthem. Thank you for joining us.
Dear Almighty Father, we express our sincere gratitude for the gift of another day. We ask forgiveness for our sins, for which we lay our regrets and sorrows. Thank you for your overflowing and unending patience, kindness, and love that you shower us every day of our lives. Today, as we gather for this special event, we humbly seek your divine providence to help us share your grace to others. Help us engage in meaningful discussions by giving us wisdom, understanding, and guidance. Help us learn and grow and love one another so that we can become better children of yours. Amen.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyang ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisigit. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong baghaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang islap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhati pagsinta, buhay ang langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Good afternoon. Isang makakalikasang pagbati sa inyong lahat. At Happy 2025! Sana ay maging mapayapa, makabuluhan, ligtas at maginhawa ito para sa lahat. Welcome to our first episode for the year, the 415th Kamayan para sa Kalikasan Forum, the longest-running environmental forum in the Philippines. This is brought to you every third Friday of the month by Green Convergence, or GC for short. We are now live streaming at the GC Facebook page, and a video recording will later be uploaded at the GC website and the GC YouTube channel. I am your moderator, Marie Marciano, a founding member and former vice president of GC, former president of Mother Earth Foundation, former executive director of ABS-CBN Foundation's Bantay Kalikasan, among numerous other past and present engagements, mostly in organizations and causes advocating for the environment, human rights, and social justice. And now, it's time to meet our co-moderator, who has been a staunch environmental advocate since 1995. He was a youth leader for organizations like NUSP, CEGP, Youth for Sustainable Development Assembly, and the Asia-Europe Youth Network for Sustainable Development. Today, concurrent with his involvement in various environmental and socio-civic organizations, he is focusing on green governance as part of the Green Party of the Philippines and Bunyog Pagkakaisa in the Senate. He is also a representative of Bayanihan para sa Kalikasan movement, and a former member of the Board of Trustees of Green Convergence. And here he is, my partner in crime, David De Angelo. Hi, David.
Makakalikasang hapon, Miss Marie, and sa lahat po ng kasama natin today sa ating Kamayan Forum, 5th Philippine Environment Summit Spotlighting Relief for a planet and grief. And I have seen our participants coming from various sectors, the government, academe, students. And this is a very interesting topic because next month na, no? Yung ating PIP, Philippine Environmental Summit in Iloilo.
At
Ayan.
saka iba talaga to kasi ito ay celebration of what
Yes.
the environment movement has done. No? So, hindi tayo puro reklamo. Meron
Mayroon
din tayo.
tayong ginagawa at gumagawa tayo ng solusyon, hindi lang Green Convergence. Siyempre, all of the organizations that are part of the whole
Yes, the whole
ecosystem of the planet.
environment
Yes.
movement, kasama ang government, ang business,
Yes.
lahat-lahat na may ginagawa for the environment. We have to celebrate that because, alam mo, sabi nga nila, what you celebrate, sabi ng psychologists, what you celebrate tends to repeat itself. Kaya
Yes.
kailangan nating i-celebrate bawat small victory para maulit, di ba? So, I'm glad you could make it today.
Yeah,
Busy, busy, busy.
always for green convergence. Of course, hindi tayo ano kasi green convergence is one of my mentors and inspiration in being in the environmental sector since the time of GMA, yung panahon pa to ng yung nag-export ng basura, yung
Oo,
Canada, yung
naalala ko
Jepepa.
nag-attend ka ng early Kamayan para sa Kalikasan Forum.
Sa ano pa yon, may libre pang eat all you can sa
Yes,
Kamayan
yes.
Restaurant.
Naalala ko kayo nila Greg between yung mga youth. Wait. To formally begin our 2025 opening salvo, which is, by intention, a feel-good episode to hopefully attract more good news this year, we are happy to have once again the president of Green Convergence, a known leader of the Philippine environment movement and a pillar of environmental education, Miss Victoria Segovia.
Hear me? Am I
Yes, loud and
audible?
clear.
Okay.
Loud and
Happy New
clear.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Afternoon.
Happy New Year.
Maayong hapon sa aton nga tanan. Since you will be in Iloilo next month, you better start learning a few Ilonggo phrases. Our letters inviting partners and sponsors to the 5th Philippine Environment Summit calls attention to the reality that we are now in the climate boiling era that requires immediate action from everyone. WMO, or the World Meteorological Organization, confirms 2024 as the warmest, reaching 1.55 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. There goes our Paris Agreement goal of 1.5. I think each one of us can attest that we experience the impacts of global warming. We were promised that we can buy rice at 20 pesos per kilo. Instead, we experience, for the first time in my life's hair story, that we can buy one piece of tomato for 20 pesos, or sometimes going up to 30 pesos in some areas. The vendors explain that the floods and typhoons of the past months have destroyed the crops, thus the rising cost of farm products. On the other hand, other places report that heat inflation is all heatflation. They call it heatflation. Heatflation is also driving up food prices. On a wider scale, we witness with horror, you have discussed this earlier, the devastation that gutted significant areas in California. They say that the extremely dry conditions in Los Angeles, very likely exacerbated by climate change, continue to fuel the worst fires in the city's history. Even as this nightmare is happening, the mid-Atlantic part of the United States canceled classes, offices, and flights, and businesses closed due to a deadly winter storm affecting millions of people living in that area, disrupting lives. Many governors declared states of emergency. Scientists attribute the phenomenon to a fast-warming Arctic, which is weakening the jet stream and causing disruptions of the polar vortex. Nosebleed ba yan? Anyway, so climate change is really, again, the culprit here. With all of these experiences and observations, the fifth Philippine Environment Summit invites us to look at the other side of the bend and search for the silver lining. Instead of feeling desperate and helpless, we gathered stories of how the different sectors of society are managing the crisis on a big scale or small scale. This afternoon, we will get a glimpse of what to expect during the summit. What big or small climate mitigation measures are happening in our midst? What is the government doing? What can each one of us do to contribute to lessen one's carbon footprints so that we can attain our goal of net zero carbon in the future? Let me leave you a New Year's message. Despite the climate crisis and present day worries, remember, life is short, smile, while you still have teeth. See you in Iloilo. Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Vicky. Alam mo,
Vicky, thank
ang
you,
very
Vicky.
catchy doon na Miss Marino, na-capture ni President Vicky, yung tinatawag niyang jet stream ng ocean. There is actually a study. I don't want to not to scare everyone, but there is a study that it might actually stop from circulating. Yung tinatawag natin ocean current due to the climate crisis that's happening. And it's actually the second year in a row that we have surpassed, no, Miss Vicky, the 1.5. I think in 2020, last December 2023, that's at 1.53, and now it's even increasing. So it's a very critical time, and we have to really, kumbaga sa ano, kailangan nating bilisan, kailangan kumilos ngayon.
Yeah, but now today and for the summit, we're going to talk about nice things,
Yes,
that will inspire us and encourage us to do more, no?
because
So,
there's still hope that we can
thank you
do
for there is
something.
always hope. So,
Yes.
but before we introduce our first resource speaker, allow me to give you a short rundown of the program flow. It's quite simple. The forum has two major parts. Part one consists of the speakers' presentations to be given successively without Q&A interruptions. And part two is the open forum where you can then freely ask your questions, which will be answered directly by the speakers concerned. Since questions will not be entertained during part one, it would be good to note down any questions that might occur to you then to avoid forgetting them. That's it. But David, I believe, has a few guidelines to add.
Yes, and of course, we would like to make this forum as inspiring and as knowledgeable as possible for everyone to know. So, number one, to avoid distracting ambient noise, all participants are requested to keep your microphones on mute for the duration of the webinar, except during the open forum when participants are welcome to speak and ask questions. Meantime, you may use the chat box for comments, reactions, or messages. And if you will be turning on your video, I'm adding this one, please make sure that your background is blur or there is nothing that would disrupt the forum. Delikado kasi yung mga naka-turn na video, so be mindful of those.
Thank you, David. We can now proceed to part one, the speaker segment. Our first speaker is someone Kamayan regulars know very well. Through many years, she has given countless opening and closing remarks and other things in between for Kamayan. The founder and former longtime president of Green Convergence, she remains a member of its board of trustees and is widely recognized for her leadership in environmental protection and education. I'm happy to welcome back to our virtual podium Dr. Angelina Galang.
Good afternoon, Dr. G.
Good
Hi,
afternoon,
Marie and
Angelina.
David.
Good afternoon and Happy
Good
New Year.
afternoon. Good afternoon. Isang makakalikasang hapon sa ating lahat.
Isang
for always starting the Kamayan, for being the mainstays of Kamayan. And thank you for all for joining us to this sneak preview of our fifth Philippine Environment Summit to be held in Iloilo in February 19 to 21. Ordinarily, environmental conferences are all about problems, and rightly so, because we have so many problems with our soil, water, forest, etc. And there's so much to fix. However, our summits, as Vicky and our hosts have said, give the good news. Given the problems, what are we doing about it? The government, private sector, civil society, what are these actors doing? I'm 84 years old, and I have seen the evolution and would like to go through a brief journey of the environmental movement to contextualize our summit. Perhaps we can say that the environmental movement started in the 70s. We had Haribon, for example, which had been on advocacy for birds even way before. We had the Philippine Federation for Environmental Concerns, who, according to Google, gave the first Environment Congress in the Philippines. I attended that. I don't know if Vicky and Marie attended that. Then we had the Miriam Peace, Public Education and Awareness Campaign for the Environment. We started in 1978, probably the first school-based environment NGOs. And around the same time, we also had the Philippine Network for Environmental Educators. Then it was the Environmental Educators Network of the Philippines. In the 80s, more and more organizations sprouted up. So many. And so the environmental movement became very robust. Trainings, seminars, conferences, rallies, lobbying in Congress, opposing tree cutting, barricades against illegal mining, chainsaw confiscation. So many projects on the ground, but also positive ones, reforestation, waste management, etc. And they all reflected a growing constituency that treasured ecological integrity and worked to preserve it. In 2007, an issue that strengthened the bonds among environmentalists was JIPEPA, Japan-Philippine Economic Partnership Agreement, which threatened to allow importation of Japan's waste to the Philippines, besides other lopsided features. Since then, the group held what we now call SONA, State of Nature Assessment, a yearly assessment of the state of our environment. In 2011, Green Convergence was incorporated, and we took the reins of the project formally. And we have been holding SONA since then, holding it also in different parts of the country as requested by some groups. In 2012, Kamayan, para sa kalikasan, which had been organized by CLEAR, Communications League for Environmental Action and Restoration, started by our friends Ding Reyes and Dick Milan, who were press people, and they held this Kamayan for journalists, trying to influence them to cover environmental issues. And the the management of Kamayan fell again to green convergence, and we were happy for that. And we have faithfully held Kamayan on schedule every third Friday of the month. Um, have okay. Of course, in 2016, we had always dreamed of reaching many people, because one of our objectives is to have a critical mass of Filipinos working for the environment. And if we have to have a critical mass, we have to talk to many people. And so, since our platform is objective, is awareness raising, we thought, well, we should have conferences which will gather many people. Our dream is to fill up the Araneta Coliseum, but we had to tone down our dream. And so we settled for a summit which would gather around 1,000 people. And fortuitously, when we approached DNR for support, the secretary then, Secretary Ramon Paje, readily agreed to take on the big expense of the summit. And we had our first Philippine Environment Summit in 2016 in Mall of Asia. He told us, why don't we hold the summit every year? But we said, we will die if we did that, considering all the arrangements. So we settled for every 2 years. So we had the second summit in 2018 in Cebu, the third in Cagayan de Oro, and the fourth in Tagaytay. Have we done well by the environment with all these conferences, etc., etc.? Some skeptics would say, ay nako, we still have problems. What have you done? Well, of course, you can always look at some glass half full and half empty. But I think the environment would be much worse if civil society did not act. We have influenced Congress, not to take all the credit, but we have passed the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Solid Waste Management Act, the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, the Environmental Education Act, and so on, no? And my own observation, remember, I'm 84 years old, that the environment is much better, at least what is around us. Littering was terrible before. Smoke belching was terrible before. You could see black smoke, white smoke coming out from vehicles, but you don't see that now. Of course, we have our new problems. We have microplastics, coastal pollution. The coasts were so clean before, we could swim in Baclaran. And of course now, the existential threat to humankind, climate change. I don't think I have to repeat what you have been hearing, that the climate is heating up and heating up. And because of the disturbance in atmospheric and water currents, we have global warming and ice melting in the poles and in the seas, submerging coastal communities, causing terrible typhoons and disastrous droughts. And we are called upon to do our share. We are called upon to lower our carbon emissions, because climate change, which is the flip side of global warming, is here, it's now, it's urgent. We emphasize the need to reach climate neutrality. That is, our carbon emissions should be balanced by our carbon sinks or our offsets like trees and vegetation. This should be done globally, by nations, by communities, by households, by individuals, fast. While we have been doing this, the community that comes regularly in Kamayan, while we have been doing our environment-friendly actions, which are all directly or indirectly connected to climate change, we have to be more definite about it. And I mean, we should measure, we should quantify our carbon footprint. And we do this by a calculator that Green Convergence has developed. And there are other calculators, but what we developed is for households and individuals for the Philippine setting using Philippine standards. Okay, let me give you a glimpse of the program. Program is a 3-day conference. The mornings are given to plenary speeches by esteemed advocates. Of course, we have the Secretary of the DNR in the first day. We have French Jesuit economists in the second day, and Mr. Federico Lopez of the conglomerate of First Philippine Holdings. Then we have the governor of Tarlac, and we have climate change commissioners to give us the national perspective. In the afternoon of the first day, we will have sharings from government, business, and academe to show us how they measure their carbon footprint and their strategies to lower it. In the second day, we will have strategies which are for mitigating our carbon footprint. And on the third day, strategies for resilience and adaptation. Okay, I guess I hope I have given you a taste of the summit. Okay, so this is just a draft, but we're going to have we might change this picture, but this poster shows you the famous promenade and bike and walk lane, pedestrian lanes of Iloilo, the Dinagyang Festival, for which Iloilo is known, the mangroves, because Iloilo has a robust mangrove program, and famous heritage building, because Iloilo is rich in cultural heritage. So, let's go to Iloilo. Here we come, Iloilo. So please buy your tickets now while the prices might still be lower. Thank you. See you in Iloilo. Let's have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. G. Very, very exciting Philippine Environmental Summit. Come to think of it, it's the PIP already. Parang kailan lang, no? Miss Marie,
Yes.
parang kailan lang, isang pangarap. But ngayon, pang-5 beses na. So
You
it's
know,
10 years
you
times
know,
2 ba, di ba? It's in a span of 10 years, 5 kasi 5 times 2 every 2 years. Very, very inspiring and very amazing accomplishment.
David, yung Philippine Environment Summit is always a happy event. Alam mo, when you're walking around while it's ongoing, people are all smiling. Nakakatuwa. Oo, kasi we need that eh.
Yun ang maganda talaga doon kasi it offers solutions in a
Yeah.
problem that
And
seems
it
to be
gives hope.
difficult.
Parang
Yeah.
nakikita mo, pwede, pwede. Di
Saka
ba?
hindi lang siya hope na abstract eh. You see it on the ground, you see
Kaya
people
nga
doing
pwede,
it.
kitang-kita mo,
Yes. And
pwede
it's
talaga.
replicable. Pwede talagang gawin ng iba
O,
pang nandun.
nagawa na eh. O, di ba?
Yes, yes, yes.